This past Sunday, I made the claim in my sermon that our entire faith hinges on the resurrection. Now, at one level, that may seem rather obvious. After all, it's what we proclaim week in and week out. But I strongly suspect that we often limit our understanding of the resurrection to just two things. First, that it gives us a sense of assurance that this world is not all there is, and that when we die, that's not the end of our existence. And second, it provides us a sense of comfort and assurance that our loved ones are not just dead and gone, but that we will see them again. But these two things are just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. The resurrection means much, much more than that. The resurrection has to do with this life every bit as much as it does with the life to come. Today's assurance of pardon expresses exactly this truth. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Friday, February 18th, 2022. Those who have witnessed baptisms and graveside services that I perform know that I quote the same verse from Romans 14 in both. That verse says, "If we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So then whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's." I say this verse at both occasions to constantly remind us of the close connection between baptism and the resurrection. Baptism isn't just a sweet thing we do to infants. Paul reminds us that when we are baptized into Christ's death and into his resurrection. We Presbyterians and others who baptize infants and who perform baptism through the symbolism of placing a little bit of water on the head miss a little something compared to the way our Anabaptist sisters and brothers do it. They insist on fully immersing the person being baptized. Not only that, the form of immersion simply isn't making someone squat down until their head is underwater. The minister performing the baptism puts a hand behind the person's back and lays them back as if they were going to lie down. What they are doing is laying the person into the grave. And when they come up out of the water, it symbolizes their rising again from the dead. Anabaptists insist that this is the only true and valid way to baptize, though of course we disagree. Still, those of us who do it by sprinkling miss a little bit of the visual symbolism of baptism's connection with death and resurrection compared with our way of doing it. Today's assurance of pardon brings this symbolism fully into view. It is from Romans chapter 6, verses 3 and 4. It says, "Hear now the good news. Do you not know that all of us who have been baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death? Therefore we have been buried with him by baptism into death, so that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, so we too might walk in newness of life. Friends, believe the good news. In Jesus Christ we are forgiven." So you see, Paul makes the link between baptism, death, and resurrection apparent for all to see. But it's what he says at the end of this short passage that is easy to miss, and it's what makes the resurrection something more than simply a future hope. It enables us, as he says, to walk in newness of life. Actually, this brief passage begins with one of Paul's famous rhetorical questions. He's been talking about how we are justified not by our good works, but only by the grace of God. The conclusion one might draw from this argument in Romans 5 is that if our sin makes God's grace abound, then why not sin more so that there will be more grace? In answer to that false conclusion, he asks at the beginning of Romans 6 this question: should we continue in sin in order that grace may abound? And he answers that same way he answers other similar questions throughout Romans: by no means. Because we have died to sin, why should we go on living in it? He then answers the question more fully by making clear this connection between death and resurrection. In baptism, we die to sin and are raised to a new kind of life. In short, we live out the resurrection in this life every bit as much as we do in the life to come. If you ask me, it's a great assurance of pardon. It reminds us that not only have we died to sin, but that we now live a new life, a life beyond sin, even if we keep on sinning. The truth is that sin no longer has the last word in our lives. And that makes all the difference. Now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.